I found something strange in my new cottage. Let's get straight into that. I found the diary in a musty old drawer while unpacking some boxes. It was my first weekend at a new place. I'd bought it dirt cheap and it was going to be the perfect refuge from the world. A cottage in the rolling Irish landscape, 20 miles from any sign of civilization. My wife gave me a lot of grief about blowing my savings on the holiday home, but she's coming round to the idea. The estate agent told me that the previous owner was a sheep farmer who lived there all year round. A tough old boot by all accounts. He died a few years ago and the place has been vacant ever since. The diary was mildewed and most of the pages were missing. The handwriting is pretty faded, but I've managed to transcribe some of the last entries. Transcription begins. Morning, November the 3rd, 2013. There was another dead ewe today. Bullet found her on the ridge this morning. That's 3 this month and a total of 9. 4 from October and 2 back in September. I'm guessing it's a wild dog that's causing all this hassle. I don't know what dog can survive a winter on the Slayak Mektir, but he's one hardy bastard. I've never seen sheep attacked like this. The ewe was completely ripped in half, her entrails strewn all over the mountainside. I found the head a few yards from the carcass. It's been torn clean off. I was going to wait another week, but I'm taking the rest of the flock down the mountain today. The way prices have dropped, you need every lamb just to get by. That's the long and the short of it these days. At least I've got some mutton for myself and Bullet tonight. Even sheepdogs need a treat now and again. Night, November 4th, 2013. The thing came down the valley tonight. I'm just finished my tea when I heard the commotion outside. I grabbed my shotgun and went to investigate. I found it bent over another sheep, its jaws locked around the poor creature. I fired a blast into the air and the beast dropped its prey and then turned towards me. That's when I got a good look at it. I'm not very good at descriptions, but I'll do my best. Think of the biggest dog you've ever seen. Now multiply that by 3. Its back legs were like dogs, but its front limbs were long and spindly. It looked all sorts of wrong. The thing stood on its hind legs and went for me. Its gaping maw was wet with blood. I aimed again and heard a dull click. I tried to load the shells from my pocket, but my stiff old fingers aren't what they used to be. I was a dead man until Bullet dived at the monster, sinking his teeth into its front leg. The two animals struggled as I reloaded the shotgun. I heard Bullet yelp in pain as I fired a round of buckshot, barely grazing the thing as it disappeared into the darkness. Bullet was lying on the ground, panting heavily. I saw his slashed belly and knew what had to be done. I petted him one last time and put him out of his misery. It was the merciful thing to do. Ground's too frozen to bury him. I'll need to build a fire in the morning. Morning, November 5th, 2013. The first snow came in this morning as I burned Bullet. He was a good old dog and deserved better. I reckon I could still last out the winter if I keep the sheep close and barricade the door and the windows at night. Weather's too bad to go down to town now. The jeep won't make it down the trail until the thaw. I have to get to work soon. I know that thing will be back and I'll be ready for it. It killed my dog, and I'll be damned if it gets me too. Transcription ends. I'm going back to the cottage today to search for more pages. I'm completely freaked out, but I have to find out what happened. I need to know if this thing is still out there. Update, January 29th, 2018. I drove back from the cottage at first light. Although it was pouring with rain and the journey was treacherous, I wasn't about to stay another night. It may have just been the diary, but I thought that I heard strange noises in the valley, like distant howling carried on the wind. I turned the place inside out looking for more pages or any clues as to what happened. I finally found some loose sheets of paper wedged into an almanac at the bottom of some mouldy hardbacks. Whoever cleared this place out was not very thorough. The handwriting seems to be the same, definitive cursive, although the pages are damp and the entries are hastily scrawled. I've also been trying to contact the estate agent to see if he knew anything about the old man's death. He still hasn't returned my calls. I have a sinking feeling he's avoided me. I need to get some sleep, but I wanted to post this transcription as soon as possible. Transcription begins. Night, December the 2nd, 2013. It's been over 3 weeks since the thing attacked me. I've boarded up the windows and reinforced the door of the cottage. I've also hammered down any few posts and put up a barbed wire fence to protect the sheep at night. I've been reading a bit of Dostoevsky and Tolstoy to pass the time, but I'm afraid the Russians aren't very comforting on nights like these. I miss Bullet. He was good company for an old fellow like me. The flock are still spooked. Sheep aren't the sharpest of animals in the world, but they know it was death when they saw the creature. They don't trust their surroundings anymore. I saw the same fear back in the Congo in '61. It's impossible to go back once you see how fleeting life is. I'm tempted to have a splash of poitin to dull the senses. But there's an electricity in the air tonight. I know it's coming back. I'll be sleeping in the armchair with one eye open and the shotgun by my side. Next legible entry. Unknown date. It came 2 nights ago. I was dozing off in the chair when the beast smashed through the front door. Its razor-sharp claws made kindling of the heavy timber. I shot blindly, skimming its left flank as it bounded towards me. I readjusted my aim as the creature crouched on its hind legs and leapt into the air. I squeezed the trigger and fired again as the gun was knocked from my hands. The thing shrank back and let out this desperate howl. That was the worst part. I describe it as a howl, but there was something more human, more familiar about that piercing shriek. A searing pain erupted in my right arm as I looked down at the bloody mess of torn flesh and sinew. The beast lashed out wildly in its torment, the damage from the blast etched across its ruined jaw. The shotgun lay on the other side of the room, out of my reach. I spied the bottle of poutine and grabbed it from the table. I threw it at the fiend and ran to the hearth, hurling a smoking log for good measure. The thing lit up like a Christmas tree, wailing in agony as it sprinted out through the demolished door and into the snow. Next legible entry. Morning, December 18, 2013. I am writing this to warn the poor devil that comes looking for me. There's something evil in these mountains and it's not safe for man nor beast. I've tried to track the creature, but I found nothing except a small trail of blood leading up the mountain path. All of my sheep are dead. I've repaired the doorway as best I could, but I can't keep out the cold. I tried to patch up my arm too, but crooked stitches and antiseptic can only do so much. I expected the worst when I changed the dressing today. What I saw instead made my blood freeze. The wound is almost completely healed. I am too long in the tooth to know that's not right. That thing has left its mark on me. I've loaded my shotgun and I'm finishing off the last packet of Lucky Strike. It's a pity. I was saving the smokes until New Year's Eve. To whoever finds me, burn me like I burned Bullet. Do what I didn't have the courage to do myself. God help me. Transcription ends. I'm driving to the estate agency tomorrow. I've also asked a journalist friend if she could help with some research. But the estate agent is my closest link to finding out what happened. I found something strange in my new cottage. Update. I drove to the agency early this morning and parked a few yards from the building. My plan was to approach Steve, the estate agent, on his way to work. I took a sip of my coffee from the thermos and looked down at the lunch my wife had packed me. As far as she knew, I had gone to work as usual. I've decided not to tell her anything until I know for certain what happened. I adore the woman, but right now I'm choosing spooky warehound over telling my wife that I'm too scared to stay in a cottage that I've spent my life savings on. She's even planning a weekend there for Valentine's. I was about 40 minutes into my stakeout when I saw Steve sauntering up the footpath in an expensive-looking suit. I exited the car and made a beeline towards him. A look of mild irritation flashed across his face. "Well, hello there," he exclaimed, brandishing a row of brilliant white teeth as he held out his hand. I grasped it firmly. "I need to speak to you about the cottage you sold me." "Of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's just that I'm already late for a viewing. If you could leave a message with the secretary." I rested my other hand on his shoulder. I didn't break away from the handshake. "I've left several messages, but you haven't returned my calls. You seem like a busy man, and that's fine, Steve. Go to the viewing if you have to. But I will be back tomorrow morning, and the morning after, and the morning after that. I'll keep coming back until you talk to me." Steve mumbled a resignation and checked his watch. "I can spare 10 minutes. All of Steve's slick charm evaporated as he got into the car. He tapped his fingers impatiently on the dashboard. "So, what's on your mind?" "It's about the previous owner of the cottage, the old man. I need to know exactly how he died." "Have the locals been telling you stories?" "Don't mind them. They're country bumpkins from Ballygo backwards who still believe in pizzogs and fairy forts." "I haven't spoken to any of the locals," I snapped. "I found a diary that belonged to the old man. He wrote that he was being stalked by some sort of wild dog. I want to know what happened to him." Steve exhaled sharply. "The truth is that they never found the old man. Some people went to check on him when he didn't come back to town in the spring. They found the cottage in a mess. The door, the furniture, everything was smashed to bits. The only sign of him was a pool of blood with some footprints in it. There was also some matter splattered against the back wall. It's all in the Garda report. The conclusion was that the old man had a psychotic break and shot his sheep, his dog, and then himself. Supposedly he survived the gun shop and went up the mountains to finish the job. They searched for him, but the body was never recovered. He was legally declared dead 18 months ago, and the cottage was left to a grand niece in Australia. As you can imagine, she just wanted to sell up." I felt my anger rising. "And it never occurred to you to tell me about this?" "It's not stigmatised property. There was no foul play and, technically, no suicide took place. I was under no obligation to disclose anything." He opened the door of the car and got out. "Look, if it's just a sad story about a lonely old man whose only legacy was a few dead sheep, whatever you found just proved how sick he really was. Move on and enjoy your new cottage." Steve gave me another megawatt smirk as I drove away, utterly dejected. I was on my way home when I got a call from Grace, an old school friend that works for one of the national rags. I asked her to dig up some information on the cottage. An hour later, we were sitting in a cafe in the city centre. After exchanging pleasantries about the work and family, Grace took a folder and notebook from her bag. "So, I did some light sleuthing on your cottage. You're looking to buy it?" "I've been thinking about it," I lied. "Lucky you. Not many people can afford to buy these days." Her brow furrowed as she sifted through her folder. "You may want to pass up on this particular place, though." "Oh, really?" I said, my heart sinking. "Well, the property itself is fine, but the surrounding area doesn't seem to be too kosher." She whipped out a print-off and handed it to me. It was the front page of a newspaper article dated June 8th, 2014. My mouth went dry as I read the opening paragraph. "Search for Dutch backpackers continues. Gardaí are appealing to the public for assistance in tracing the whereabouts of Koen Hersbach and Jocelyn van Hoeven. Hersbach and van Hoeven were last seen hiking at the Slaap Mik Tier Mountains on Monday, June the 2nd, 2014. Authorities have found no trace of the couple except for some torn articles of clothing. Concern is mounting for the welfare of the backpackers, who were on holiday in the Wicklow area." Grace flipped through her notebook. "I've searched through the archives at the office and there's a whole bunch of these missing persons reports. Brothers Rory and Michael Quinn, missing since 2016. Dolores O'Flaherty, schoolteacher, and Letitia Deschamps, French hiker, both missing since 2015. I also found an article on 3 UCD students that disappeared while camping near Slaap Mik Tier in 2014. The list goes on. And no bodies were ever recovered. None. It's like the world just gobbled them up. I stared at the photo of Cohen and Jocelyn's smiling faces. Grace took a swig of her cappuccino. The clue's in the name though, isn't it? I wouldn't go hiking in a place named Slab Mick Tier. I stared at her blankly. She looked at me with a mock of disapproval. Irish was never your best subject, was it? You do know what Slab Mick Tier means. Wolf Mountain. I'm sitting at my desk now, clutching my wife's sterling silver crucifix. The old man was right. There's something evil in Slab Mick Tier. There's a lot going on through my mind right now. How will I tell my wife about the cottage? Will she believe me? How much fuel would I need to burn the place down to the ground? I look at the crucifix in my hand, and my mind suddenly set. How many bullets do I need? I found something strange in my new cottage. Update 2. My name is Grace. A few days ago, my friend Jerry posted about a diary he found in his new cottage in Ireland. I'm going to continue his story as best I can. You see, Jerry is officially missing. I'm a journalist by profession, but I can't officially cover the incident due to conflict of interest. This hasn't stopped me from driving up there and digging around for information. I've learned that Jerry's car was found by the police at his cottage early this morning. His wife reported him missing when he failed to return home 2 days ago. Both the car and the property were burnt to a cinder. There were also some shell casings and what my contact described as strange activity at the scene. Although Jerry was seen in a nearby town, locals are keeping stum about the incident. I wasn't particularly hopeful about the outcome of all of this, considering the research I've carried out on Slab Mick Tier. However, what I found in my letterbox this afternoon knocked me for 6. The package had no postmark or return address. It was delivered by hand. A small notebook fell from the oversized envelope. I immediately recognised Jerry's steady script from when I used to copy his homework at school. I've no way of verifying the notebook's authenticity, but I truly believe that this is Jerry's version of what happened. His account name and password were included in the notebook, so I'm posting the transcription here, as I presume he wanted as many people as possible to know what happened. Transcription begins. January 31st, 2018. Dear Grace, if you're reading this, then something bad has happened to me. I'm sorry, but I lied to you about the Slab Mick Tier. I own the cottage that I asked you to research. Trust me, I wish I'd never set eyes on it. There's something in these mountains that killed the last owner, and maybe countless others. You'll probably think I'm crazy, but I believe that it is some sort of werewolf. Werewolf? I feel ridiculous even writing the word. We live in an era of hipsters, Netflix and negative equity, not werewolves. Call it a pig-headed sense of duty, but I feel that it is my responsibility to find it. You know I've always bitten off more than I can chew. Like when I got in a fight with Liam O'Shaughnessy at school. He was 2 years ahead of me and built like a juggernaut. I couldn't open my left eye for a week afterwards. I also have no idea how to kill a creature that may be supernatural. That's a job for Van Helsing, not a QA specialist with hay fever. I've tried to find someone that manufactures silver bullets with intention of forming a plan afterwards. It was a desperate solution, but there had to be some truth in the legends, right? As you probably figured out, silver foundries and machine shops are not exactly in abundance in this part of the world. In a mixture of frustration and blind hope, I turned to the golden pages and called every listed metalworker that I could find. The reactions weren't exactly supportive, that is, until I called a place named Osiris Silversmiths. An answering machine picked up and I blurted out a condensed version of my story. I had just hung up when the phone buzzed in my hand. I wasn't met with the usual explanatives of howls of laughter as I repeated the story in greater detail. The line hummed with static after I had finished, and the voice on the other end finally muttered, "We only kill it if it turns. 5,000 a dog. Cash only." Tag is not a tall man. In fact, apart from a thin silvery scar on his chin, there's nothing remarkable about him except for his eyes. Dark, deep-set eyes with the faintest spark of indigo. They scrutinised me as I shook his hand, my fingers clenched over leathery flesh. "This the place?" I nodded. His manner was gruff but firm. We agreed to meet at the cottage the morning after speaking on the phone. I was instructed not to breathe a word of this to anyone, not even my wife, like she'd believe me. I removed the envelope of cash from my pocket. I imagined Tag taking me for everything I had at this moment, leaving me bruised and bloodied on the mountainside. Instead, he thumbled through the wadded notes. Satisfied, he placed the envelope in the back pocket of his treadwear jeans and turned his gaze on the surrounding area. He gave the air a sniff. Not ideal, but it'll do. He let out a shrill whistle and a pale, gangly youth hopped down from Tag's mud-splattered jeep with a large rucksack. He set it down with a dull clank inside the cottage, laying the contents on the rough kitchen table. In all, there was a long coil of thick rope, a container of paraffin oil, 3 bear traps, 2 axes, a shotgun, and a derringer, and several crudely sharpened stakes. The effect was distinctly underwhelming. I picked up one of the sticks, running my finger along the pointed tip, and I turned to Tag. Shouldn't we have more guns?" Tags twisted his mouth into a smirk. "Ever fired a gun, have you?" I shook my head, feeling the tips of my ears go red. "I thought not. We go about this quietly. Gunshots attract attention. And when this thing comes, you won't breathe for fear. You might be lucky to get a shot in before he's on you. A bit of clawing, a bit of tenderizing, and you're done." He gestured to the stake. "That's pure Rowan wood, blessed by the order of Augustine. It'll serve you better than any gun." "What about silver bullets, though? We'll need them." He let out a throaty laugh. The boy gave a half-suppressed snicker. "Silver bullets? Ha! You city boys watch too many films. Sure, normal bullets would slow them, but these beasts are healers. They recover fast, and we have to do this quick. There's only one surefire way to kill a dog." Tag picked up one of the axes from the table. "You remove the head completely." I spent most of the afternoon breaking up the wooden logs piled against the side of the cottage. Tag showed me how to properly aim and swing, his hunched shoulders suppressing a bullish strength. As someone who's more than a little squeamish at the sight of blood, the thoughts of decapitating a man-sized wolf made my stomach churn. I still don't fully believe that this thing is real, but I've also handed over $5,000 to a man who's most likely a charlatan. But there's an innate instinct, a feeling in the pit of my stomach that tells me that something is out here. At least the repetitive task of chopping wood took my mind off the uneasiness that hung in the air. It felt like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Tag remained in the cottage while the boy watched me from the worn stump. He never uttered a word. The sharp crack of metal against wood sounded across the valley as the day slipped away. I stopped as the sky turned a duskish hue. Tag appeared at the doorway and beckoned to the boy. "You go on now, lad. Come back at first light." He motioned in my direction. "This one's a sight hog. I'm not sure how he'll handle the axe. If the job goes bad, you know what needs doing." The lad nodded glumly and made his way back to the jeep. I watched as the headlights faded down the mountainside. "Now," said Tag, "I could murder a pint." With a church, post office and 2 pubs, the village at the foot of Slab McTeer is no different from any other village. However, as we made our way to the nearest pub, the outline of the church struck me as odd. The main structure had 4 towering steeples and was flanked by buttresses on either side. Quite grand for a village church. I also noticed that neither the roof nor any of the steeples were topped with a crucifix or weather vane. I shuddered as the din from the open pub door parted the night's air. The conversation grew hushed as Tag and I entered. He bought our drinks and staked out a table at the back. Tag sipped his pint of stout, taking in every grain of wood and matching the local stare for stare. It's hard to put an age on him. He either looks good for 60 or wretched for 45. But I tried to make conversation. "So, are there, many others in this line of work?" Tag continued to stare towards the door. "A few." How long have you been and your son been doing the business? The lad's not my boy. Oh, do you have family? No, just me and the lad now. So he is family, in a way. Silence lingered between us for several minutes, until I could no longer hold back the question I wanted to ask. What exactly is this thing? Tag turned to face me. The priests say that they were once wicked men who sold their souls to the devil, then tried to trick him out of the bargain. The devil cursed them, turning them into wolves that wear the flesh of men, dooming them and their offspring to roam the earth until the end of days. He downed his remaining beer in one draught. Personally, I think it's a load of shite. Who knows why creatures like that exist? Most people think them a myth now, but they still run in smaller numbers in rural areas. The majority of wolves keep their heads down, picking off livestock or the odd vagrant here and there. Your wolf acts differently though. He doesn't care who sees. Mad dog. Haven't seen a lone rogue like this in a long time. He placed his glass back on the table. Let's be off. I downed my drink and followed Tug. I saw him lean towards a barman as he passed the counter, but I couldn't make out what he said. I only heard the older man's response. I'll hear none of that talk. All that's in those mountains of mist and rock. It's not our fault the few blow-ins can't hack it in the wild. A swarthy man with long dark hair seemed to materialise beside Tug. He'd been listening to the conversation from his seat by the door. It's a terrible shame. People get awful fearful in those mountains. Must be the wind. I think that's what turned Desi mad in the end. Who knows? Maybe he's still running around out there. You boys should go back home instead of coming out here to the little village and upsetting John. Respectable publican that he is. He stared at the barman. Isn't that right, John? The colour drained from the barman's ruddy face. He cast his eyes to the ground and mumbled. Yes, Nowies. The wind was picking up when we left the pub. I pulled up the collar of my jacket as we walked towards the car. The hairs on the back of my neck bristled. We were being watched. We're back at the cottage now, and I'm still shaken by the exchange at the pub. There's something about this place, something that goes deep and makes me feel like I don't belong. I'm reminded of the old warning people wrote on maps. Here be dragons. Well, there are dragons here, Grace. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm afraid. I decided to write all of this down while Tag is sharpening his steaks and humming the red and green of mayo. He explained the plan twice, although I'm still not sure what I have to do. I'm not going to ask again. He's not exactly the loquacious type. I must stop writing now. I hear a car pulling up outside. Transcription ends. I'll transcribe the last part of Jerry's entry as soon as I can. I'm still looking into the incident at the cottage, as well as the company of Osiris silversmiths. I'll post whatever extra information I manage to uncover. Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Thank you ever so much for all your support. Please do like, share and comment. And remember, be safe, not sorry.